Welcome to Superhuman Training.
Playfully embodying the new spiritual renaissance.
I'm Colby Collins.
And I'm Melissa Orion.
And today we're going to be talking about the power of art and music as a catalyst for spiritual awakening and societal transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whew! Well, that's a topic right up our alleys. So
for episode 7.
Yay!
Yes.
We're over halfway through this particular series. So if you've been following us to date, we have covered many, many topics. And this one, it really kind of wraps them up into a nice little package.
Yes, and we've very much been appreciating the comments. I've gotten a few emails and some personal notes from people who've been listening and saying that it's really been impactful for them and brought up a lot of great questions. And so we love that. We love questions and feedback about anything and everything to do with the show or your own experiences. And so for anyone listening who has reached out to us, thank you so much for that.
Yes, and please share, because we're just getting rolling with this, and there's so much more that we want to share, and so please share with your friends and family.
Yeah, and I wanted to have an announcement too to acknowledge the our first 6 episodes we put out on a weekly basis, and that now we have switched to having a bit more time in between because of Melissa and I's amazing life happenings right now, and also to give us and our listeners more time to digest some of these really powerful topics, and we'll be repeating them with future series and all of that. But so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yes, thank you,
we
Colby.
weren't really dropping off or stopping doing it or anything.
No,
like
not at
that.
all. We're just busy.
We're busy.
And we like to be in proximity with each other. And so
Yes.
that's something that we've been trying to hold and not just do it over the phone. So we're sitting in physical space with each other right now.
Yes.
And we welcome you into this physical space.
Check to do your check-in.
Check-ins. Great. I have had an extremely full couple of weeks. Much travel. I just got back from New York City.
Ooh,
and I was there on a deep soul mission, and I sowed a lot of seeds, and I look forward to seeing what grows from them. I was there specifically to network and weave this bigger vision that I've been working on with my production company that I founded, that Colby is a part of, and I am so happy to say that I met some really powerful people for the mission as far as producers in New York City, because we've been writing a Broadway show, and that Broadway show is intended to weave the voices of the world, and especially in New York City right now. So I am excited that is in the works, and this is many, many years in the building for me, and so that was very powerful. And I'd like to say New York is crazy intense, and if you choose to live there, wow, you're a rock star. And if you frequent there, amazing, you're also a rock star. And I hope that you also find ways to ground yourself, because we are so blessed living in the Northwest.
Oh, I know. I got about 6-7 days of New York City in me that I'm just like loving it. I'm so good, posh, I'm the top of the world. And then the
end of
week mark, I'm like catching myself being rude, and I'm like, what? That's not like me. What is this? And then it's like I'm so overloaded and overstimulated and crazed. Yeah.
Well, and it was a heat wave while I was there, and it was right before 4th of July, so there was fireworks going off everywhere. So it was just a lot for my nervous system to handle. And I know that if I'm going to be spending a lot more time there working on these projects, that I want to find a way to really ground into my practice there a lot more. And so that
penthouse.
Yeah, I gotta have my penthouse with my yoga room. No, I think that the key to this is that we are following those calls inside to really be grounded with our own practice, no matter where we are in the world. So,
or what's happening, or how things are accelerating.
Exactly. As you embark soon on your journey to Asia and India, you're going to be.
I hadn't shared that yet.
Oh shit! Actually, you kind of did last time.
I did.
You did. And
I'm so in the present.
So there's you sure was. You don't even know what you shared. But I'm really good at cataloging what's been shared.
Yes. I believe last time I was sharing that it was just starting to peak. Yeah, the last time that we spoke, that my awareness of the trip was kind of just peeking over the horizon for me, and since then it really has solidified in a very powerful way of feeling this spiritual odyssey, this pilgrimage to Southeast Asia and really to India, which I've been feeling as long as I can remember, like picking up pieces of the soul memory there, and also dedicating my life to spiritual practice more and everything that I've been learning about relating and of being a human, and grounding those things in, and also the art projects that are alive for me, which is what we're doing here, and the daily video show that I'm going to start doing about accelerated awakening. I'm going to be calling This Cherished Life. And
beautiful.
Online courses and lots of just amazing art projects. I'm starting to work on a new book that is very exciting, and so it feels so appropriate that our check-ins are really about what's super, super present right now, which is our connection to ourselves and each other as artists, and artists in a context of being a new myth maker, and that's what I was just watching RuPaul's Drag Race, and they just had the big finale, and it's my favorite show of all time, and most people look at it and they're like, oh, it's just another reality show, it's just another one of those shows where you can win $100,000 and it's catty and dramatic and all that, and like, yes, it is all those things, but oh no, it's not. There's so much depth and substance there, and to me the essence of what that show is doing is that it is bringing forth this gender bending but really celebration and exaltation of the feminine, and that it's male bodied people that are allowing this feminine light and feminine power to burst through them, and that perhaps because of that masculine energy, it's like an exaggerated way, so it's almost like not that men can be feminine too, but also like as an honoring of women and an honoring of the goddess, and all the different, they play all different roles, and getting in touch with like what a woman's experience is or could be, or relating to that. And I think that is such a powerful key to transform our society of like each of us, no matter of our physical sex. We've talked about that, and but the art of it, the artistry, and the one queen who won when it said like, what do you want to say? You won. And she said, drag queens in the gay or queer world since the 50s and 60s have been the keepers of the stories and the keepers of the history, and I just got chills all over because it made me think of the Fool card and the tarot, and the court jesters of old, the minstrels who would weave the myths along for the people and carry the most significant nuggets of wisdom of our human legacy into reflecting on the future and the present that we're creating. And that artists really, I feel, are such a vital part of this movement of launching us into a new paradigm. And so, all the performers and the writers and the musicians and the poets and the movie script makers and the playwrights and all of that, the painters and the photographers, and we are the people that are digesting the old myths, putting it together, traveling about and gathering the new wisdom, and creating and weaving and expressing in this incredible mosaic where we're going.
The new story.
The new story.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I love that we call this program spiritual, or we say that it is embodying the new spiritual renaissance, and renaissance being all around art and creativity, and so the expression,
which is feminine in nature, isn't it? This burst of feminine light.
And so it makes total sense that in this culture right now, that's what's bubbling forward. And I love your check-in because that's and I love that you brought up RuPaul's Drag Race, because you will often say, if you can't love yourself, how the hell you gonna love anybody else?
Can I get an amen?
Amen. That's something that Ru says nearly every episode, and I think that that's something that is so crucial for us to recognize, that self-love is the route to self-mastery. And if you aren't embodying and empowering yourself with that acceptance and that love, then how are you going to let creativity flow through you? And so I think that it's perfectly timed that we are talking about this episode after the 6 episodes that we've worked on so far, because it's all around being in a presence with yourself, listening to yourself, honoring where you are, and then being in a practice with the muse and being in a practice with the flow of creativity. So I'd like to just kind of take the baton for a second and talk
that's
about
what maybe another superhuman quality is a visceral relationship, in your words, which I love so much, the muse, which is that spark of creativity. And even if you don't relate to yourself as an autist, that you have access to creativity that can come through your business plan or your mothering skills or whatever, right? Yes.
Literally the way you see the world.
Yes.
That's what we've been talking about with this, is your valuing.
Yes.
And it's your vantage point. It's the way you see the world. And I know I've said this before, and you have, that our narrative that's flowing through our consciousness is our choice. And so we are the editors, the directors, the cinematographers of the movie of our life, just like we are the casting directors. Mm-hmm. So the people that are in our life are our choice. Mm-hmm. And the way that we relate to that larger story arc of who we are, that's our choice. And so the way we edit our memories and the way that we program our brains to bring in new information, that's really the superhuman powers that we've been talking about. And so I just want to bring a little focus around the word muse and genius. There's a beautiful TED Talk that Elizabeth Gilbert, the writer of
Eat, Pray, Love. Yeah.
She so beautifully articulated something that has really rang in me for a very long time, and she showed some history of the word muse and genius. That previous to this time, a muse or a genius was a disembodied spirit that the artist or the musician worked with. And so it was always known that they lived in the walls of the studio and that you would work in partnership with them. And so she was bringing that up because she was talking about the pressure that we put on ourselves as creators, and that wasn't the case before, where when you created something, whether it was super successful or it bombed, that weight was on the shoulders of the muse or the genius that you were working with.
And you're just trusting and being the vessel.
And so they would say things like, oh, well, you didn't have a very good muse for that one, because that didn't do so well. And so she was bringing it up around the pressure that people are putting on her to create the next big book, the next bestseller. And so when she first started talking in the TED Talk, she said, and I encourage everyone to listen to this, that people would say, oh, yeah, so that must be challenging. You already had success, so now what? It's all downhill from here. And that's not the case when you're in practice with the muse. And so that's what I want to really get into today from my perspective, that when I've been in an artistic, creative space, which is my entire life, but when I've been in these really heightened portals, as I call them, of creativity, I feel myself in divine relationship with the muse. And then I can relate that to other times in my life where I've been super focused on objective and been very much in my linear mind, and I'm not allowing the muse to guide my ship. And then I will be taken down by the muse, that something in me has to create, and it will destroy me if it doesn't come out. And so what I went into with my superhuman training program when I first coined that term 10 years ago or more was around being in a daily practice with the muse. And so I cut out every single thing that could distract me, relationships with anyone else, and I set the container of 2 years, and it turned into 6. So I was staying out of the boxes of relationship, the box of other people's projects or other people's problems, and the box of I can't. And that laid a beautiful path for me to have a new relationship with creativity itself. And so in the practice of that, I accomplished, quote unquote, a lot. But what I really feel like my greatest accomplishment was to find in myself that place that can hear when the muse wants to be met. And then I can set that container for that art or the music to come out.
So you find your relationship and your awareness of the value of that relationship in the context of your life.
And I feel like everyone has that ability.
Absolutely.
Even if they are, quote unquote, not an artist.
Right.
And I've worked with a lot of adult individuals that do not see themselves as creative. And through some art therapy, I'm able to show them they can create. And they get so excited that they made something. And so we find really easy ways to get them to do that. But there's a lot of people that won't even doodle. They won't,
Right.
They don't think they have a creative bone in their bodies. And I feel like that's where a lot of stagnant energy gets stuck in people because they're not allowing themselves to create. And so
that's passion. That's that's sexual energy. That's vitality. That's health. That's where it comes from. That's where and genius. It's like depending on where that energy is expressed through, like if we're getting technical, like through the chakra system. It really that Shakti, that creative power, is life itself.
Exactly. And so when we block it by saying, I can't do that, because we're comparing ourselves to others, then we're blocking that fire. And that's what destroys us from the inside.
Indeed.
So the more I've been able to be in a practice of just creating, the more I find that I'm flowing and that I'm able to be in more of a flow state in the rest of my life. And so I relate this to writers. There's a lot of writers will just show up for it, and they will be in the practice of writing from 9 to 5 or whatever it is, and they'll say, you know what, maybe some days nothing good comes out, but they're in the practice of it.
They're in the practice of creating and maintaining a space for the conditions to be there without being attached. And all we can really do is create conditions and then surrender ourselves to the container is set, show up, not show up, and then be with
what is. And so I think that as we get into some of the more broad strokes of this for the world, relating it back to the superhuman journey that we're each on, and that by entering into that partnership with the muse, whether it's with basketball or with gardening, whatever it is, it can be art if we see it that way.
Yes, and life is art, everything is art. I was so honestly just captivated by everything you said.
Yay!
I'm just like resonating it with so much, and it just felt like this beautiful flower blossoming as you were speaking, and I was even feeling into the art of verbal expressing in language and the feeling nature of it, that I could feel that you weren't fabricating your thoughts or bringing thoughts in and then filtering them and then fabricating because you want to control how you want to be heard or seen or whatever. It was such beautiful flow, and I felt my heart just vibing. And I was telling a friend last night that I began having this language of energy to where I hear people talking, and some part of me is registering the words, but it's not that I'm not listening to the words. It's actually, I hear the words, I'm listening to the energy.
Yeah.
And in that listening, I could feel the integrity of that flow. And so the words were there. And I feel like that shift in value alone right there transforms the way that we think about art and creativity, because in every expression there is an opportunity to be creative in that expression, no matter what it is. And any industry, any game-changing moment that was an innovation, a new invention, a new code, whatever, that people would think is not creative at all, that's that spark of creativity that brought in that innovation. And as I was listening to you talk and illustrating that, I feel just so nail on the head. The question that was arising in me that I noticed was, why? If this is a part of if we all have the potential, we all have the makeup to become superhumans, meaning that every single human being has got the same hardware, right? And it's the software that runs through that hardware that makes all the difference. Then how is it that so few people don't own or recognize their artistry and what they do. My dad's a perfect example. I mean, he's a master welder. I mean, he could do things with metal and torches and things that I couldn't dream of doing, right? And there's no way, I mean, he maybe even looks down upon people who claim themselves as artists, and that's what I really want to get to, taking it back to the value. Artistic talent, creativity in general, and the awareness of our capacity to hear but listen is supremely undervalued in our society. And so there's such a big force already that wants to suppress it, diminish it, and we can put it in the language of the masculine and feminine. Again, the feminine represents creativity, and the masculine needs to be one thing, balance, which means that he is serving the expression of the feminine. She brings it in, hands it to him, he executes it, or he could be in protector mode. And in order to be in protector mode, he's got to run the show, and she needs to hide in the basement, and not so she won't get hurt, right? And there's that dichotomy. And in order to shift that, there's an impetus, and I feel that anyone endeavoring to inquire about this term superhuman, this term awakened being, self-realized self, that our heart calls us to, whatever those words point to, because we can feel the resonance. And that's what I mean. It doesn't even matter what the words are. We can tune that.
Right.
It is our mandate, I feel very connected personally to a mandate of doing the inner work, and this is what the practice, the diligence of the practice is, of creating conditions and setting the space, that maybe the muse doesn't come, but the muse is actually asking you to work on some more of those hindrances, some more refinement around your value system, that you created a teeny little space in 10 minutes to get it, versus, and they're like, why? What are your thoughts around that? You're not valuing this enough. You can't even barely hear me, right? And it's like, you got to create the space to bring me close to you, and that the muse is channeling, and that's I think one of the core foundational superhuman qualities is multidimensional awareness, and our awareness of the observer, the one who values, and the one that's in the creation or of the creation. And so could we talk maybe for a few minutes about some specific examples about how we as a society are perpetuating an undervaluing, which means it's not up to the essential value, an undervaluing of creativity and art, and how that is expressed in artists in general, and maybe even anything that comes up around that, because I think a lot of us that are listening, and even me, when I was really looking at this in myself, was like, is there any unconscious ways that I am perpetuating this pattern of either in myself or in others, because my family, my grandmother, and I was a writer and reader a lot, and I would write short stories and do all these things, and I wanted to play the piano, and I loved playing the piano, and I wanted to be in band. And in the family that I was in, and my dad wanted me to be the football star, and this like epitome of masculinity that I tried to be and just couldn't, right? That it was like I had to practice my piano in secret. They didn't want to hear it. I had to put my headphones on. They never came to any of my recitals. My grandmother would take and I love her. I'm the same, she's, bless her heart, and she's one of the most incredible people in my life. But at that point, she would pull the books out of my hand and rip them up and say, you need to get to doing chores and learn these things. These are more valuable to you. This is what's going to make you money in the future.
Right.
It's not, you're never going to amount to anything if you want to be a writer or whatever.
Right.
And how many of us are
from
perpetuating
fear and
that?
Scarcity.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to bring that up to the people listening. I believe we could all relate to this. So.
Have you heard of Coco yet? The new
I
Pixar. Do you see it?
Loved it. Yeah, I
so
saw it.
that is a perfect example
Yes, it
of
is.
a family that values and has created a core belief that music is pain,
Yeah.
and that it's not the route to safety. It's not the route to success, but it's also dangerous. And so if you haven't seen Coco, see it. It's really incredible movie.
Wonderful.
It's really beautiful. But I think that what came up in me was the term that we just throw around, starving artist.
Yeah.
That in our culture, being an artist means that you are suffering and that you have a struggle, and that struggle makes art is one of the beliefs. So when I went to art school and I was studying art, that was a big part of the story of a lot of artists, was that came through pain and it came through suffering.
Which is valid on a certain level.
It's
right?
valid on a certain
context,
level,
right?
because they're more empathic to what's happening.
And it takes that creativity to burst them out of the pain, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, and
so
it's the way we work through it,
yes.
right? So
we think it was the idea thing,
the idea of perpetuating suffering,
right,
in order to keep art going,
right,
versus using art as a tool for working through the suffering,
right,
without that story that if you are healed, quote unquote, that you will not have any more art.
Right.
And that's just not true, because so many of the people that we are close with now are incredible musicians and artists, and they have a really solid practice with themselves and a really solid spiritual relationship with life itself. And they are not perpetuating idea of suffering. And
but
most
because
of the
they've
people,
met their suffering in a greater degree, and that's the key. And
they're letting the truth of what is flow through them as they let those particular stories of the now go away.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, I really want us to shift culturally from starving artist to thriving artist. And I think that is a big shift that will happen, that is happening in our value system, that will change the course of especially this country and the entire world.
And look how polarized it is.
It's
the people
polarized.
Like some of the people that are of the most highest class, highest paid possible things that you can earn other than big business are artists, right? The millionaire painters or actors or what, maybe all
musicians.
These things, right? And exactly. And then it's like, oh, it's one or the other. You're either going to be filthy rich or you're going to be eating scraps,
right? And then
there's
this
no
idea
middle.
that
There's no room for more people to be
that it's such a lottery to win that prize, and that's just not the truth.
Yeah.
The truth of it is even without financial success, an artist can find so much success, fulfillment,
yeah.
and live an extremely thriving, full life in the process of creating. And most of the time that comes through collaboration with others. Mm-hmm. So what I found with most of our very successful friends in music and in painting and these other art forms is that they have to have a team of people supporting them to get that mission out. Because what I've understood over time, being somebody that is an incredible creative, that I need the support of people that understand QuickBooks and understand how to market things, so that I don't have to step out of the creative bubble that I'm in order to do all these logistical things. And that's just not the case with most people. They don't have that support team. And so they might be the most talented painter or talented musician that you could ever meet, and without people to help support them in all the other aspects of getting their gift to the world, they drown in that space of, I can't do it all. I absolutely can't do it all.
Oh my God, so, I chills again, because I don't know if you've seen it, a new Netflix, it's a comedy show, but it's called Nanette, and it's an Australian.
I heard about this. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I laughed, I cried, I shook my fist at the patriarchy. Oh, it was transcendent. It was genius, totally Muse, powerful thing. But it reminded me, everyone should watch it. It more harkens to some of the topics that we've already covered in our previous episodes, but that also this was her artistry, and that she even broke it down. This is the art of joke making, and here's why you're laughing in the moment I want you to laugh. Here's the only reason why you're laughing is because I made you tense before. Laughter dispels tenseness, but I made you tense in the first place, and all the things. But she was telling a story about, she was an art history major, so she wove in all of these old art myths and the way we look at the old artists like Picasso and Van Gogh, and weaving it all in such a just, I think, beautiful way. But what she was saying about Van Gogh is this misconception of I don't know why he was so, depressed or tortured or mentally ill or whatever. Well, look at him now. She's like, yeah, he's dead, and that there's this misconception of the good artist couldn't make it or whatever. And she's like, the only reason why is because he had some mental illness, most of us maybe, to varying degrees, but that he could not talk to people. he couldn't sell himself. He couldn't get super close. He was very close with his brother, but that was it. He didn't have people to support him to go out and cross the street and say, look at my friend's art, or look at my art. What do you think? The networking piece, still even in that old day. And that, I was just really thinking about that when you said that, and that really that part so depends on our, and to me, when I put myself in that situation, it's like, what is the difference between, because I've just come out of a cycle in the last couple of years, even in the last few months, with a Saturn transit where I was facing that gateway of aloneness. Where am I reaching for support from, and why? Where am I not valuing what I have, my resources, even if they're immaterial, enough to create the conditions for them to be expressed to then turn into material? And when that shifted for me, I was able to reprioritize my relationship to the Muse and to my resources. And then you used that word earlier, collaboration. And I feel even a vibrational difference between will you support me and will you bless me and let me bless you and let's collaborate, right? And then because you're right there in the thing of like, we're being support for each other and whatever those roles may be or however it may look like, but it's actually this synergy, this resonance. And I feel like that's what is missing. And in order to do that, because if I have this thing of like, I'm burdened by it and no one's going to help me, or I need all this stuff, or I need you to help me, and we're already not valuing it enough in ourselves to trust that even if I don't make much money in this, like, I could move to Thailand where it's like super cheap to live and like be just fine and super happy. It's not about the money, right? But it's that energy, and that the people who can allow themselves to be supported because they know the value of their work and how it is supporting, and they're owning that, and they're expressing it, and they're collaborating with others that resonate.
Beautiful. And I feel like the key to knowing that it's valuable is knowing that that's the one thing that if you don't do it, you're going to die.
You're gonna die.
And if you do it, you're going to feel relief. You're going to feel the gratitude inside of just even being present to create that. And so I didn't make any money from my art for a very long time. And then suddenly I started selling a lot of paintings. And
I remember.
Right? The magic that can come from just being in the process. Not because you are doing it for someone else or doing it for the money, but just being in the process of it. There was something I read the other day because I'm collaborating to write this amazing Broadway show that will change the world. What I was reading about pitching Broadway shows, just for fun. And there's an article written by a very intelligent but very snarky person, and it had like 30 things to do. And the first one was quit. The second one was evaluate your sanity.
Right. Okay,
and then the third one was, if this is something that if you don't do it, it will kill you, Proceed. Right. So it's what he was saying is that it's insane to think that you're going to make it as a Broadway writer. That it's such a small handful of people. So this is his perspective.
Right.
And he's looking at it from this quantifying level. He's really looking at it comparatively. He's looking at it statistically. And he says, yet the people that make it are the ones that absolutely could not have done anything else. That this was the only path for their creativity to flow at that point. And that's what I feel 100% is the motivating factor for me in creativity.
What's coming up in that,
and it's an inner knowing without anything that has proven itself from the outer world. So nobody has contacted me and said, write a Broadway show for us.
We're going to validate you.
We're going to validate you. It all has come from inside. And for me, as a dream worker, I've spent many hours of my dream life in the space of the completed puzzle of this show. And I love living there.
Yes.
I can go to sleep every night and be fine living there. And so I know that the only way I'm going to be able to live there in my awake life is if I take the steps every single day to create that rush of energy towards that as the only objective. And so I think that what we've talked about before is in regards to action, is that action is a very masculine quality. And for me, I think about the shovel piercing the earth, and that every single time I write an email, make a phone call, sit down in front of the computer, meditate, whatever it is, I am taking action towards my dream. And that is where the feminine flow and the juice of life itself has a funnel to flow down, versus just washing out into this ambiguous marsh. And so if I was to just remain in the place of, well, it'll happen if it's supposed to happen, and I stay in this very aloof space with the creativity, then the flow is just going to disperse.
Yes.
Yet every single day that I've taken a step towards my vision and my dream, I've created a pathway for it. And so right now, in my reality spiritually, it seems the only place I'm headed is to Broadway.
Yes.
And that's phenomenal. It feels so good in me, so that when I met people in New York, they can feel that presence before I even speak. Mm-hmm. Before I say, I'm here to do this, they know that I'm here to do something. And then when I speak it, they know that that's my truth. That's not just this wish that I have. I'm here to do something, maybe. It's, I'm here to accomplish this. And it has come from me listening and being present to it and taking daily action. So as we utilize all the skills to date of being in a daily practice, being in a practice of listening to ourselves and to life itself, what is it in you that is pounding on the door of your soul saying, do not die with me in you? This has to be given to the world. It has to express itself, or it's going to haunt you for eternity. What in there needs to be heard? For me and you, we're pretty clear on that. Mm-hmm. And that's why we found each other, because we were so clear on what our soul's objective is. But I know a lot of people who are still floating in that ambiguity, and they're looking for something outside themselves. And I just want to come to them and say, sit.
Yes.
Sit still for a minute. Hear what it is. And then when you hear that, take that next step. Take one step. That's all you need. It just takes one step.
Let's explore that, because I really love that. That resonates with me very strongly, to synthesize everything that you've been saying into an experimental methodology.
Yes.
That, if you relate to what Melissa was just saying, that I often call it the call, your heart's call, mm-hmm. or God's, in the Baptist church, they used to said the Lord put a call on my life, mm-hmm. Or a preacher would get the call, or whatever. We had that thing, and we can project it into big vision. Someone says, what's your dream life? Or what did you dream about? Not so much like when you were a kid and you weren't really connected to it and it was fantasy, but, when you were, 26, 27, 28, getting into Saturn return, and then there was this thing of like, no, I could never be that or do that. I better just stick with what's safe. And then you drudge through. So I like this methodology of, like, in order to create the conditions to discover your pathway and entryway to the relationship, a conscious relationship with the Muse, mm-hmm. which really all we got to do is surrender ourselves to that, and then it works and moves through us, and then to cultivate the conviction of our, like, masculine personal energy that's surrendered to the Muse, and the Muse says, here's a task, mm-hmm. no questions, task, and the masculine goes, okay. It's like a servant. It does the task and then comes back, like a dog, like a pet even. And that, of course, that master servant, deep relationship, which is so much what we've been talking about with, like, why we go to the mat, why we sit, why we go, to be with the truth of ourselves, to look at everything that's here and investigate it and inquire. And so I would say that, like you were saying, step one, sit, practice, sit mm-hmm. with yourself, feel what you got to feel. What are you feeling? If you're feeling unfulfilled, if you're feeling extreme pressure in your life to provide or give your time over or just make money, whatever that extreme pressure is, or it could be, like I felt for a long time, pressure to express my soul's purpose or mission or whatever, but feeling some other part of myself not ready, scared. So that, to me, that is factor number 2. Factor number 1, is pressure present, right? Because if we're resisting that pressure, we're not even aware how much pressure we're under, then we're, there's maybe some other more sitting. And then when the pressure seems really, and if you're listening, if you feel a ton of pressure on you, it's a clue that it is calling you home to your destiny of what is yours to do and create and express here this time. And then that number 2 is fear, right? Because once we start to surrender to that pressure, we're like, it's going to crush me. It's going to destroy me. It's going to destroy my life and my relationship, and how am I going to take care of my kids? And extreme fear, and that's part of it. That's another good sign, right? Good sign, but that's another aligned sign. And so then it's meet the fear, right? Allow oneself to feel it all the way, because on the other side of that fear, of that little death of self, of that death of I can't, right? Then we create the cauldron, the chalice that the Muse or God or our higher self or our truth or our destiny or our purpose floods in. And then the next one is listen, commune with that, then get enthusiastic, excited, even if you don't know all the answers, even if you don't know what to do, and then you ask. Once there's that connection established, what is the first, or what is the next
What's the next step? That's
what
all
is the
you need
next
to know.
step? And you will get it so clear, and when you know you get it, you will feel relief. You mentioned that earlier, and to me that is the number 1 vibration of, you got it from spirit. I'm like, what's your body feeling? Tune into your body. Oh, you just took an involuntary deep breath. What are you feeling? What do you notice? Relief. That's it, right? And so whatever makes you feel, whatever next step makes you feel the most relieved, that's it, and just do it. So you think you can offer the
reciprocal loop of gratitude for that.
That's
gratitude for all of those steps.
all along the way.
And giving yourself the props for even showing up. Because most people that are stuck in their loop, they haven't taken that one sidebar with themselves to just sit long enough to hear what is really calling them. And so all these signs and symptoms of the issue, quote unquote, are bubbling up. And all they're seeing are the signs and symptoms. They're not actually listening to that inner problem, quote unquote, that is actually hiding the gold, the pearl that is inside there, the power,
creativity,
and so
the resource.
The what we've gotten on so many times, and what really we're here to do, is reappropriate our values. And so if our values are my safety, my success of my family, of the lineage of my family, of my children's lives, it's all on my shoulders, and that weight isn't healthy for us. And the only one that can shift that value isn't in the Oval Office, and he isn't the Pope. The person that's going to shift that is you. And the only way to shift it is to listen, like you just said, deep enough to hear what that next step is, and to really own in yourself that the only risk is not moving that energy. That I truly feel that most of the causality of our symptoms in our culture that show up as cancer, that show up as heart disease, they come from stagnant energy not moving.
Pressure,
and so the weight that we take on in this life, that's why I feel like it is beneficial that people have a spiritual group that they're a part of, that it is very beneficial for a lot of souls to be united in something and feel that safety net of their community. So whether it's a church or whether it is a spiritual practice that they're a part of, when they take the weight off their own individual shoulders and share it with the group, and then in a lot of religions, it's release it to God, or whatever you call it, that the weight of it is actually held on the shoulders of all.
And it's only so heavy because of the way we value it, what we're making it mean in
our
context. It's not that it doesn't have value, it's just, is it appropriate value? Is it aligned with the essential value? It has value, but in context to living my most exalted life and contributing to, to this energy, that has more value than the resistance that facilitated. But it's not either or and no,
Right.
And so I love all of that, and I love how powerfully simple this tool and invitation that we're sharing with you all. I feel even more inspired and motivated to employ it in an even more conscious, powerful way in my own life and in my reflections with the people that mean the most to me, such as yourself. And that it really can be that simple, and the experiment of, let me sit and feel, do I feel extreme pressure or unfulfillment? And when I breathe into that, does a big amount of fear come? Can I be with the fear and let that happen? And then let me notice, where that breakthrough comes. And once the breakthrough happens and that relief is, even in the smallest measure, what is my one next step? And to have the commitment to consistently create the conditions for that next step to be fulfilled, even if you're not quite sure. And that's what strengthens our connection with the Muse is, move forward a little bit, do that next step. Well, nothing happened. It's like, listen. Are you hearing or are you listening? Next. Do that step again and again, or whatever, right? And that's to me, the most thrilling thing about being an artist is this connection, and that this music can be inspiration from. I've just hearing one person say a line in passing, or a film, or like that, the shows that we've talked about, like Coco and Nanette, or the trees, or it's all of a sudden the universe speaking to us in every which way, because now we have the capacity to truly listen, and that is superhuman quality. Number 222.
Well, somebody that we've mentioned before is a dear friend that passed away a few years ago, Miss Bina Zing, and we call her the patron saint of life as art. She was here to instigate and inspire people to see their lives as art. And so the subtleties of nature, I am so much more aware of that because of her presence in my life, where I see art in everything. And I see that weave through it all, and myself as one aspect and one facet of it, which makes me art. I am a living embodiment of art, and you are a living embodiment of art. And so it's so heady when we get in our heads to think we're all one and the whole planet is one, and yet to feel it, to feel that synergy of all the parts, that is art. And so I really want to just hone in on wherever we are right now, no matter if we feel creative or we don't, we can shift our perspective of ourselves and the perspective of our viewpoint of life itself.
We'll always have that power.
We have that power. And so one of the things that I started doing years ago with my mirror practice was I simply would look at myself in the mirror and allow all of the stories of the day to drop away and be present with what was real. And I started getting flashes of my young child self and flashes of this infinite grandmother self. And in that, I started to see that I was just an I, and I love that we say I.
Yes.
Because EYE, I am just a viewpoint of divinity itself.
Yes.
And so if I can look at my own perspective and shift it just a little bit, then the aperture of what I'm taking in grows. And I'm able to bring in.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like photography.
Yes,
so
the
when I
aperture
started
humming.
doing this work of going back to my child self and saying, little Melissa, you are just perfect. Little Melissa, you are loved. And giving her the energy that I desired as a child, giving it to her in my quantum timeline, when I would turn back around into my present awake life, it was like everything was more vivid.
Yes.
And I was bringing in so much more than I ever had before, because I was allowing myself to feel seen and feel heard inside.
Yes.
And so I feel
can I just stop you?
Yeah.
I was just hearing one of the most inspiring things that I ever read, and someone channeled it at some point, and they said, what you are looking for is what is looking.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what you just said in another way.
Yeah.
And that once you make that loop, like the snake eating its tail,
Mm-hmm.
that is that gateway that opens up us to multidimensional awareness, where you're talking about everything's more vivid, everything's more sharp, everything's more aligned.
Yes.
What you are looking for is what is looking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just feel that's so buoyant and robust.
It is. I feel buoyant in that. I feel like I'm floating when we speak like that versus the status quo.
Yeah.
And that everything is so individualized and everything is about meeting an objective so that we have safety and so that our family can live on this planet and continue to thrive. That shift from I am looking for something outside myself. I'm looking for the person that's going to connect me to that, or I'm looking for the next answer to my questions. That isn't the route. And I feel like that double toroid field of what I'm putting out is coming right back to me. And so I have to see it inside. And so the more that we can open ourselves to the possibility that life is magic. Just open ourselves to the possibility that life is art. And we have to value
that perception, and that's what you're looking for is what is looking. That is the epiphany of what I think I need to get in order to have all these things. It comes from my perception, what is looking. I get to decide what I think I'm looking at and how much it matters.
Yeah.
And that is the key to everything, to unlocking our art and to shifting. That is the how behind how you shift value systems that are deeply entrenched in our unconscious and emotional self. So we just got a few more minutes, and I have a couple really, really, really valuable, exciting things that have just been coming that this whole conversation and listening to you speak has sparked.
Great.
And the one thing is this invitation to cultivate our refinement of our awareness of what creativity and art is in our daily lives, and to use our senses as a guide. And so like with vision, it's like, okay, I'm going to look at some paintings, or I'm going to go outside and look at the ocean, or look at whatever it is that is visually appealing. I'm going to look at my partner, or I'm going to look at my body in the mirror, or whatever, and to see how my eyes are noticing the detail and how we can appreciate the beauty or the grotesqueness that is somehow fascinating, whatever it is, that fascination energy. And if we can tune into that, then our ears, let me just go to the park and listen to the cacophony of all the sounds. Let me listen to music that moves me, music that's strange to me, or the sound of my own voice, or the sound of my child's voice, or the sound of someone breathing, whatever it is, sound. What's fascinating about it? Why? Then smell. You know, when I was feeling the smell, I'm like cooking and walking through a garden, or smelling the vegetables, even if it's just faint, like honing in what's fascinating about the way that smells. Or like, for me, I'm always like sniffing my armpits, I'm just like loving it. I'm like,
you love
your
own smell.
Yeah. And then the taste, again, so that kind of brings back to food, but what are all the other things? Like if we can like tune into the layers of texture and flavors that are happening there. Art is all around us. We're inundated with it. We're perceiving it all the time. And to me, this is a great exercise or invitation to bring more value, because we're bringing more attention and awareness to the subtleties of what's already here and our capacity to experience it, which we already have.
Yes.
So there's that. And then I was given just the other day a decision tree for soul aligned or Christ aligned, and now I'm going to update it Muse aligned expression.
Beautiful.
Decision tree for Muse aligned expression. And so it's a series of questions that when you feel like, okay, like I had the thing that I have to express or I'm going to die. Okay, I've committed to it. I got to my next step. I'm doing my next step. And then sometimes we like hit this wall, or if we're really aware, we have that moment where we can take that deep breath in and be like, what's this? How does it feel? Right? And to me, this was a tool that was given to just give us like almost like a checklist. So first, in the context of I'm going to express this thing, I'm going to write this paper, I'm going to make this song, I'm going to say this thing, or even if it's down to conflict resolution of like what I'm going to say in response to someone who's triggered me, right, or made me upset or dishonored me, or the way I've dishonored someone. Number one, is it honest? Let's really look at that. Is it honest? And so the tree splits. If yes, right, then it goes on. If it's no, the question becomes, why am I invested in being dishonest? And you got to investigate that. So anytime you hit a no, the tree blocks off. If it's a yes, we flow. The second question is it kind? Mm-hmm. And then Spirit came in with that with me because I recently, just in the thing was I was responding to a comment someone made on one of my Facebook posts. And I really didn't breathe into, I just knew that I felt dissonant with what their comment was. Mm-hmm. And so I was like typing. I typed up this long explanation, explaining, acknowledging the dissonance, la. And when I did that, I immediately felt the buoyancy of the intention behind my original expression, which was the post, deflate. And I felt it, and I was like, whoa, why? And so I was like, I don't know why. It sounds great. And so Spirit said, is it honest? And I was like, yeah, it's honest. They said, is it kind? And I was like, yeah, it's definitely kind. They said, does it sound kind or does it feel kind? And I went, oh, shit. Shit! No, it doesn't. It sounds kind, but it doesn't feel kind. It's not kind. Mm-hmm. So I had to go to the no. And the no was, can I take responsibility and own my disharmony? She's putting her disharmony out, and then my disharmony plugged right in and was like, no, I'm going to convince you, I'm going to fight, I'm going to explain, I'm going to defend, right? That's my disharmony. So I did that, and in the moment that I did that, I was like, okay, then what does feel kind? And Spirit immediately wrote, it was just like a one-line answer, and as soon as that was there, I felt the buoyancy return. That third question, if it is kind, yet does it serve others? I can really feel that. Is this serving me or me trying to get something, validation or whatever, or does it truly serve others, and who am I serving? And if the answer is no, it's, can I enjoy this expression just for me and let that be enough, right, for me or my space or whatever? If the answer is yes, the last question is, am I creating the conditions to fully embody this expression? And if it's no, then it's, why am I not ready or resisting the conviction and courage and commitment that it takes to create those conditions? It's like, if it's honest and it's kind and it serves, I better give it my all I got. And if I can't do that, why?
Right.
And so if the answer is yes to that, rock it, girl.
Right.
That's the decision tree. It was like, rock it right there.
I love that.
And I love to, feeling it. Is it honest? Does it feel honest? Does it feel kind? Does it serve others? Am I creating the conditions to express it fully?
Beautiful. I love that. And then I think that just wrapping up, one of the things that was a practice for me in my art as a painter, I did a series of 30 paintings where I did them one a day.
Yeah.
And so I didn't do them all in a row for 30 days. There was a few days in between sometimes, but I created a container where I had to finish what I started. And so that, for me, I went through that line of the questions for myself, and that was the last one was where I was getting hitched for myself, where I wasn't creating the ultimate container for myself of follow through.
Yes.
And so I had I've always been great at starting things. Yeah. I could start a new $1 million idea business every single day, or a new painting every 20 minutes. But can I complete it? And so that idea of setting a container for yourself, giving yourself a goal that's achievable, and then following through with that. It can be so small. If you want to start painting, start with a 6-inch canvas and finish it. Or, if you want to be a songwriter, start with something simple and complete it. And then you can look at that and give yourself those props of, I did that. Because if you continually put yourself into a position where you start things and you don't finish them, then you create a story that you aren't good enough to finish it, or you're not committed enough to finish it. And so you start judging yourself, and then you block the creativity. So any steps you take along the path, complete them. Find in yourself.
And that is how you that's how you create value.
Right.
That is how we shift our value, is the follow through and the commitment. That is how we make art and creativity more valuable is all of us committing in our own personal way. What's my follow through? What's my commitment?
Yep.
And that is the how.
Yep.
I love that. It's a
Beautiful.
perfect closing.
Well, and then the last thing I'd like to say is support art.
Yes.
We're losing so much in our school systems, which is something we've talked about before. Support young artists, support the vibrancy of creativity in your community. Go out and pay to see a musician, buy someone's CD, buy a painting or a print, or support someone on something like Patreon, these great new websites that are helping support independent artists. Whatever it is that you can show that you value artistry, that will ripple forward because we pay with our attention.
Yes. And to give the attention and acknowledgement of people who obviously are not aware of how creative they are. Like I got to say to my dad that one time, you're really a master artist in this whittle thing. Oh, no, I'm not. But if we could also commit to doing that when we recognize someone expressing and living in their creativity, even if it's not a conventional artist type thing, to point that out and say, hey,
I value this,
and that is awesome.
Yeah, and what you're creating is valuable. So those things will ripple out, and we won't have to resist a culture that has demeaned art and put it into a box that we don't need anymore.
And as Renaissance, we will rapidly accelerate through this new value.
Exactly. Yay! Go team!
And Melissa, you're one of the most incredible artists in every way. But her website, melissaryan.com, you have all your paintings and your home decor items and all this stuff. I have several of them in my place, and so I invite everyone to go and check out her really soul-inspired art there. And so excited to hear more about how everything unfolds with Broadway and the show. And I'm deeply feeling you in that and grateful. So
I know you've been such an incredible support for it, and I feel like as we move forward with our own support of each other, then it moves us forward too. So every single time that we shine that light on a mirror in our life, then it reflects right back at us. And so the more that we can do that for each other, then the more that it grows in ourselves. Yeah. So keep that value alive and find the ways that you in each day can see your life as art.
Yes. And if you would like some help along the way, consider employing some self-awareness coaching, some art therapy.
Yep, we both offer those things.
We offer those things, but also all the things that we don't offer, so many other great shamanism and writing classes and acting classes and all these things. Go out and do something that stimulates that or enlist our help, that we're here for you. So much love, gratitude, honoring. Thank you.
Thank you for showing up with us, for showing up for yourself, and let's keep this new spiritual renaissance growing.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.